Hi, this is Unsuitable with Mary B. Safrit, the podcast where I interview single Christians about their lives and faith. Episode 2, what is up, y'all? Today, you're going to hear a conversation with Christian Smeltzer. Christian is a Seattle-born, Midwest-raised entrepreneur residing in Brooklyn. Founder and CEO of Suede Incorporated, Christian has an extensive background in financial services and business management, which he applies to both work and life alike. A resident of New York for 4 years, he enjoys spending his time building his network, developing his hobbies, and fellowshipping with friends. You can follow Suede on Instagram at SuadeApp and read more about it at www.suade.com. And those links are in the episode description for y'all. Christian and I talk about Suede, working to prove something versus working out of faith, higher education, and identity. There's a lot I think you're going to enjoy about this conversation, but my favorite thing was Christian's desire to change the way we think about our material possessions. There's lots of wisdom nuggets in here, so let's get started. Christian, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for being here. Your app for Suede is about to launch, which you're going to talk about a little bit later. But before you do that, would you walk me through an average day for you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think part of the disclaimer to that is that all of my days are very unique and different. So It's hard to pick an average one, but I guess the day starts at 6 o'clock.
Okay.
I get up, I do 30 minutes of meditation, I do, which includes stretching and different exercises with no distractions, no music, no sound, minimal lighting.
Yeah.
And then 30 minutes of Bible reading.
Yeah.
And then I make breakfast and I take a shower, which may or may not also be 30 minutes.
Right.
And then I get up and I get ready to take on the day. So I get dressed, go to work at 34th and 7th, get my full French press with 6 cups of coffee in it because I need that before 10 o'clock.
Yep.
And roll up your sleeves. So that typically goes from, let's say 9 or I guess 8 to 6:15 in the evening. And then I go home and I typically crash pretty hard.
Yeah.
And go to sleep after a few emails.
Right.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
So
feels very productive and efficient.
I'd like it to be more productive than it is. I think optimally I would have more fitness in there.
Okay.
But recently with everything that's going on, I just don't have the mental ability to go iron after pumping everything else. So,
of course.
Yeah,
that makes sense. That takes a lot of energy to be that productive all the time.
If you're good at it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Can you tell us a little bit about Suede and what led you to start it?
Yeah, I mean, Suede first stands for half of the word swap and half of the word trade, mid-transaction. So it's actually, it's a bartering application that's designed to give people more options when trying to engage the marketplace.
Yeah.
If you wanted to sell an item, that item would be competing with every other item that's for sale that's similar to it. Whereas on Suede, you could get millions and millions of different, very unique offers for that one item. So it really diversifies your ability to leverage the solid state value of the things that you own. And then if you do that strategically, you can actually increase your net value based off of the data points and the metrics that we provide to users so that they could kind of treat it like an item portfolio. Yeah. So it started 9 years ago, a little over 9 years ago, I think.
Wow.
We like to say that it's field tested because I came up with the idea in a field. That's not trademarked yet, but we're toying with the idea.
Right.
So I was raised in Missouri State as a farmer.
Okay.
And so
I also grew up on a farm.
Oh, really?
But in North Carolina.
Okay.
Yeah.
What kind of farm?
Cattle.
Yeah. Okay. So we have more similarities there.
Okay.
So we had beefalo, we had cattle, we had llamas, alpaca, everything.
Nice.
Other than horses, which are the actually only fun farm animals.
Yes.
In real reality. So. Yeah. I came up with the idea there because we just barter on the farm. So I'll trade you my tractor for your truck. You guys come help us with baling hay, and we'll help you with butcher season or whatever.
Yep.
So it was kind of that concept of very personal tie to stewardship that made you think very selectively about the components you're going to put into your truck. It's going to make you think about driving a tractor carefully. It's going to be kind of making you really engage with the things that you have as a tool versus as just an item that collects dust.
Right.
So kind of bringing
to be used and then thrown away when you're done
exactly.
with it.
Almost like a consumer mindset. It's very much more of an economic and environmentally friendly kind of community mindset.
That's really interesting. I have a friend who's just got her master's in sustainable fashion. And so she's really interested in issues of how to make the concept of how we think about clothing in particular more sustainable, as far as not like just fast fashion, right? Where you just buy a bunch of stuff to keep for however long, and then it all
that one dance or
then it all ends up in a landfill somewhere.
Exactly. Well, and I found that I actually, ironically, some of the most expensive clothing I bought was the least quality. I mean, it looked great, but buttons pop off quickly. Zippers don't stay. So
I feel like every coat that I've owned, including the one that I'm staring at that's hanging up in my office right now, the buttons have fallen off so many times.
But it's valuable to you, so you keep it.
It is.
And the person that's next to you might not value that coat at all. So that's kind of what Suede does, is it allows you to evaluate your own item based off of your need for that item, instead of looking at the retail so that companies tell you how much it's worth.
Okay.
So it's a personalized economy.
Okay.
Yeah, and so that's kind of like our unique take on the stock market and on online purchasing, where you can kind of merge the sale and purchase process together to have a symbiotic trade. So that's what we're rolling out, and we're really, really excited about that. And we have a lot of people that are flying into town for that. So,
awesome.
Yeah, we're actually using the WeWork building on 41st and Broadway.
Oh, awesome.
For that.
Yeah. I got the invitation. I plan on being there.
We're looking forward to having you.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. I think it's a really cool idea, especially like growing up on the farm. I am now like thinking about how much that's part of how my dad operates it, right? It's not his main thing. He owns a business as well. So the farm is his hobby, which, he likes to work, clearly.
Yes.
But, my dad has a buddy and they like share a bull or whatever. Okay. Like they share, different equipment, they share all sorts of stuff. And I really love the idea of equating a different type of value that's not just a monetary value to your items, and how that maybe changes how you look at your possessions.
Yeah, and I think it also changes more than just looking at your possessions, but it looks at the concept of value and kind of redefines that. I think that as a generation, we're starting to come into the understanding that you can do social investing. Giving somebody a smile as something as that on the subway, like you just gave them something that had value to it, and their life is immediately enriched in that. As long as you don't do it in a creepy way, optimally.
Right. Then you've decreased the value.
Yes, you've robbed both of yourself.
Yes.
And the MTA. Not like that can happen anymore.
Yeah.
But, the concept, of understanding that you have inherent value, and that when you interact with your space, you bring that value to your space. And so as you tie value to an item, now that item has value to you. And so something that could be handmade that your grandmother handed down to your mother and your mother handed to you might have insane amounts of value to you and might not mean anything to the next person.
Right.
And the retail market, and actually not even just the retail market, the social market, even in how we evaluate threads on Reddit or Facebook and Instagram with, the most likes or the least likes, and kind of that popularity contest dynamic. There's a lot of oversight and overlooking the personal value concept. And our economy isn't personal right now. It's very industrial. And so kind of bringing that level of intentionality behind purchase habits, sale habits, and then while it's in your possession, just steward habits, of taking care of it and why you're taking care of it. Those are kind of some of the key pillars that we're trying to address at the same time, while we're bringing that out to market. Yeah.
So that's a lot of stuff that you're accomplishing
9
with
years
this
is
app.
a lot of time to really dig deep,
figure it out.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's so cool. So you've been in New York for 5 years now?
A little over 4, actually.
4 years?
Yep. This is upcoming
2015. That's 4 years. What brought you to New York initially?
Well, it's tied to Suede. So
Okay.
I knew that when I was going to pitch the company, because I obviously knew that I didn't have enough money to start it myself, I would need to pitch the company. And if I had to pitch the company, I needed to have financial management experience so that if somebody wanted to write me a check, they
Yeah.
would know that I would be able to manage it. So
Right.
when I was younger, I went into, I was working in a mill in Missouri right off the farm, graduated high school, went to a mill, and did my best to get acquired by the architecture firm that owned the mill, and then started doing basic administrative work there.
Okay.
And then from there, it was New York, and the sights were set because I knew that if I was going to land a finance gig, Wall Street was the place.
Yeah.
In a farmer's head, that's the place you go to learn finance.
Right.
If you can make it there, you can make it anywhere.
Right. That's what they say.
Yeah. So I essentially, tried to meet everybody that I could, and I was very intentional with relationship and networking in Missouri, and met a couple people who were going to New York to do some work. And then once they moved here, they referred me to a job here, as I was just getting back in town from a trip to London and Africa as a bodyguard. And then I got a call right immediately afterwards for this job. And then shortly after I moved here, the company moved to Wall Street, and I got my dream.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
It was an interesting ride.
Yeah, for sure. That was very strategic of you, and very and also says a lot, I think, about, I don't know, maybe your ambition and your desire for yourself to do things with excellence, that you're like, I don't want to just go into finance. I want to go to Wall Street because that's the place to be. And so, growing up on a farm in Missouri, growing up on a farm in North Carolina for me, in my case, is not necessarily how, not a lot of people who I grew up with are wanting to move to New York or anything like that.
Yeah. No, I think it's an interesting kind of duality between that freedom of choice and wanting to kind of decide the level of intensity that you do something.
Right.
And then also having the kind of predetermined destiny that God gives you the choice of responding to.
Right.
And says, son or daughter, here's a calling, here's an inherent amount of gift or talent that I've given you, and these options, these opportunities will come your way. You have the opportunity to leverage them, and just getting in the habit of being successful in everything, and not what the world sees as successful, not commas in my bank account, but growing myself to grow my surroundings, to grow the results. And so by the time the results hit, we all know exactly why they came the way that they came, and it's because throughout the entire process, everything, like you were saying, is done with excellence. That's the optimal goal.
Right.
And so over the course of my life, not being excellent is again that duality concept, where the presence of my determination or ambition or however we want to word it is a responsibility that I have to apply, but it's absolutely reflective of how much I think God wants this particular thing to happen. And just when I got back, actually the way that I went to Africa was super crazy. I was working at Allstate at the time, and the Lord just totally orchestrated how He told me to quit my job at Allstate to go, and then after I quit my job is when I was offered to go to Africa. And it was the day after I was scheduled to quit. And then when I got back, I was just praying because I couldn't afford rent, I couldn't afford my insurance, my gas, anything. And I just was like, Lord, I need a job. Can you please provide a job? And as I said amen, the phone rang for the offer in New York.
Wow.
And so just the whole process of how intentional He was with giving me those opportunities, it helps me feel supported and protected in taking those risks.
Yeah. That's really cool that, because they're all risks, right? And there's an inherent, for me at least, level of anxiety with taking risks, because it's just there's so much unknown. But if it's like a God orchestrated risk, there is that inner sense of well, if this all falls to pieces, it's going to be fine because this is what you provided for me anyways. This is the door that you opened for me. And so we're not guaranteed that we're going to succeed in the sense of everything going smoothly or perfectly or even well. But, even if it doesn't go well or whatever, that it's more on him, I feel, than me.
Yeah, and I think, again, even to that, what's the definition of well, right?
Right.
Is well coming out on top, or is
Right.
well coming out in his hand and his grace?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that sometimes the more dire those situations, the better the stage she has to really show up and to make that spectacle. And so, having that on display as an individual is a process that I think we all have to get to, where those stories aren't our stories, they're his stories through us, and our testimony isn't for our benefit. It's to say, I'm totally messed up, and he made it happen, and I've redefined what success looks like because of that. So it's kind of moving the goalpost, but it is the ultimate goal, right? Is to redefine what the goal is.
Right, absolutely. Kind of along that vein, could you tell me about a time that you felt unsuitable in your work?
Every day.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's an ongoing process. When I first moved here, again, context, I moved here I was taking a bookkeeper position, and I had only done probably 5 or 6 spreadsheets at the architecture firm where I worked in Missouri. And before that, I only did 1 year of school. So I only had one math class in my entire life, which was geometry, which had nothing to do with, budget, spreadsheets, projections, percentages, accrual versus cash basis, balance sheets, ledgers. None of that was included in geometry.
Right.
And so essentially I came here, and my mantra to a degree was fake it till you make it. I knew that I was going to be able to scale to the job, but I was definitely scared that I wasn't going to be able to do it fast enough or well enough. And so on the outside, I seemed very cool and collected, at least from what I thought or what people told me. But in reality, I was absolutely scared. I was incredibly stressed. I had all of that anxiety that you were talking about. And I'm sure at that point in my life, you didn't have any anxiety because I took all of it that was existent on the planet. I was super, super tense. And so I came here, and within a week of me starting, the accountant that was supposed to train me just quit. She just didn't show up. So she had about 7,000 pieces of unfiled paper on her desk.
Amazing.
No passwords anywhere that were legible anyway. And if they were, there was
Oh, you
10
mean
versions.
like none written down?
Right.
Like everything did have passwords, you just didn't know what they were.
Correct.
Yeah.
And you would find a folder with 50,000 passwords, and it would just, words would be upside down and things would be scribbled, almost like a doodle pad. And you're like, is this our fidelity right here? And am I holding our entire key? And so the partners of the firm didn't know how to do the finances because they didn't know where they were left. And it was crazy. There was 8 months of past due invoicing. There was 8 months of past due bill payments. There was, again, just thousands and thousands and thousands of pieces of paper that were never filed, never categorized. People weren't getting their reimbursables. People weren't getting paid. It was just a total mess. And so I don't wonder why she left.
Right.
But it was definitely a lot thrust at the same time. And they were like, "Can you handle this?" And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely. Yes, sir. No problem." And I did. I couldn't,
Right.
and I knew that, but I was lying to them and lying to myself.
Right.
Because at the time I was not able to handle that. But with Christ, I was.
Right.
Over time, and it was a really beautiful process. I mean, the partners hired me as a bookkeeper, and then, after a couple of years of really, really fine-tooth combing everything, they were pretty restricted on giving me any either pay increase or title increase. So there was definitely an authoritative thing going on. And so I ended up leaving that company for that reason. They actually let me go because what they told me was that I needed to go to college. And they said,
Okay.
We brought you, because they helped pay for my move from Missouri to New York because they really wanted to hire me for this position. And so they kind of thought that they were the key as to why I was here, and they were the only thing that was keeping me afloat. I don't know how $20,000 in New York keeps anybody afloat. But,
Oh my gosh.
yeah, it was
no.
insane.
That's not enough.
Yeah, I was living on a futon for
Oh my
$800 a month.
gosh.
So so essentially they were like, looking for a job in New York without a degree is going to force you to need to go get a degree, and we think you should go to college, so we're going to fire you.
Oh.
So that's why they fired me.
That's one way to get someone to go
I don't know if that
college?
constitutes as cause, but it happened. So yeah, that whole process was very unsuitable. I felt incredibly underprepared and undersupported to do that job.
Yeah, just stepping in and immediately just having to figure it out
Right.
on your own because there was no one to train you.
Correct.
There was no one to tell you the passwords. There was no one to...
Right.
And like you said, you didn't have much experience even with making spreadsheets and whatever as well. Yeah. And I don't know what like the work culture was like, even if they were making a big deal at the end about you not going to college, if that was a component in that as well, as far as how you were feeling unsuitable in that environment, if that was just like every day you walked in trying to prove something to yourself and to them.
Absolutely. I think that's unequivocally the baseline that I was operating off of. I was so dead set on being the best that ever was to the point where I was the best that ever was there in that company at that job. But at the same time, I was the job and I was nothing beyond the job. So when I was like, no, at the end, they're like, you're not anything without us. And I was like, that's not true. That's dumb. And then I realized I've almost put myself in that position because I developed all of my skill sets, all of my relationship with the concept of work. I've developed my understanding of my value as a professional in relation to this specific job. So in reality, when you remove the job, my purpose went away. And so it was a very, very intense emotional and kind of psychological reset that I had to go through when I did leave that job. And it was obviously very stressful. In Missouri, when you want a new job, you walk up, you knock on the door, you go in, you're greeted by somebody at the front desk, and you ask for the manager. Here, you don't get in the building without a pass, and you have to have a schedule. Like there's no just accessibility. And so when you submit for jobs online and you don't have a degree, the algorithm just kicks your resume out. So they don't even see that you apply for the job in a lot of those instances. And so the job hunt, being able to now live in New York off of a zero salary, right, was very difficult. Absolutely. And I think the kind of culture, like you were mentioning, the culture of New York, of being prepared, of being educated, right? It's the information age. The more information you have, the more valuable you are. The more knowledge or experience you have, the more you've been hurt, the louder your voice gets, and the more people will listen to you. And I think it's created this culture of paper badges where we kind of elevate ourselves and de-escalate others based off of, what name brand college you went to. And in New York, you never know who you're going to bump into, so you have to look and act the part at all times. That vulnerability isn't something humans want to do by default. So when you get a really intense version of humanity, like New York, it's just accentuated to the 10th degree. So it wasn't even just at work, it was everywhere, in conversation. Even at church, so what college you go to? Why are we talking about college 2 seconds into a conversation? Is that like your exclusive identity? And to some of them it was. And to me, before I started catching on to that, my identity was that I didn't go to college. So I was doing the exact same thing, just in reverse. Yeah,
that's really interesting because it's everyone in New York, I feel like on paper is impressive in a worldly sense of they have the best degree, they have the best job, they make the best salary, and they have the best side hustle on top of it. Like everything is so geared towards production and these kinds of labels. But, college isn't in the cards for everyone. And even people who go to college don't end up, like I studied music and it's something that I still do, but not like primarily as my profession. Now I'm a writer, and I think that's also the case for a lot of people. And obviously you've done really well without a college degree. I wonder sometimes with business how, if it just doesn't make more sense for you to just do business and learn business by doing it, as opposed to sitting in a classroom and learning ideas. Because business, when you're building a business at least, or learning how to operate in a business, they all operate differently. And you're making decisions based on a really specific context.
Yeah, that's a great way to word it, because there's nothing in a textbook that's going to prepare you for what your job is actually going to require. And 83% of people who graduate with a 4-year degree or more don't ever work in their field, much less reach the top of their field.
Yeah.
If you look at college tuition, it's increased by 600% since the 70s, and there's not 600% more effectiveness from college students, right? You're still getting a grade that's relatively within proportions of individuals even 20 years ago. And I'm not against college. I think it's just a medium where people learn. And life is also a medium where people learn.
Right.
The benefit that I had at, not really going to school was that I'm 4 years ahead in my experience than anybody else my age.
Right.
And then every time, even in college that they would take, the summer off, that's another 4 months of experience that I get over them. That's consecutive. And, gaps in employment people look at as well, just like a college degree.
Right.
So the bottom line is, again, going back to interacting with your surroundings, if you're able to engage in your surroundings differently, you're going to learn different than the person next to you. Some people listen to podcasts. Some people watch movies. Some people read books. Some people speak to people. Some people philosophize on their own. And life is an amazing teacher, and it has everything to do with how you engage with life and almost nothing to do with how life engages with you. So I could go to college and I could be entirely illiterate if I decided to be. I could not go to college and not be illiterate if I decided to be. And we see that through hundreds of thousands, even millions of people who are very successful who have not gone to college. 80% of CEOs have never been to college, or they dropped out of college. And so again, there's nothing wrong with college. It's a specific skill set that you want to go to get advanced in. But my identity is not tied to a piece of paper.
Right.
It used to be tied to a job or a title, which is essentially a virtual piece of paper.
Right.
And so I was just as guilty of that same mindset as a lot of people, who don't think about where their identity comes from, where their value comes from. And so that was something that I had to learn, just like people that get out of college have to learn it. And I just learned it differently. It's the same lesson, just less expensive.
Yeah. Right.
To a degree.
Right. It's, I absolutely adore the college that I went to, and I also went to grad school as well, and I loved that experience. Undergrad in particular, I feel like really shaped the way that I thought, and allowed me a really kind of boundless area or environment to really experiment and just figure it out, because I had no idea what I wanted to do when I went in.
Sure.
But I think now a struggle that a lot of people have coming out of college especially is that employers are not just looking for this degree or that you've sat in a classroom and learned this stuff, but also for the soft skills and the soft skills of interacting with people and adapting to different situations, and constructive thinking and critical thinking are not necessarily things that are always prioritized in an academic environment.
Sure.
As far as actually operating in corporate culture, I guess.
Yeah, no, you absolutely learn that in life.
Yeah.
And life, exists all around college. The college experience that most people enjoy is life experience. Right. In reality, it's the people that I talked to who love college didn't enjoy the classroom time. They enjoyed the experiences that they had with their friends, meeting a network of people, again, having an arena where you can go and experiment. And those exist in college, and they're very intentional constructs in college, which gives you unlimited and unabated access to them, which is really, really important. And I've also had the benefit, I think, to a degree of having kind of a pre-understood desire as to what I wanted to do. So I think that's also something that kind of made college less of a conversation with me, because I knew what I wanted to do. Right. And I thought about how to get that as soon as possible. And so not everybody has maybe that option. Maybe some people want to know, like, oh, let me go try a few things and see what I
Right.
want to do, or let me see what I'm good at.
Right.
Or sometimes it's just necessity. People are like, oh, I have to kind of get into this because it's either the family business or, I need to have these skill sets for something I want to do later. And so there's, again, like you're talking about, there's a lot of specific context, and it's not a hard and fast rule for anybody. So
Right.
there's no reason why people should or shouldn't fire or hire somebody exclusively based off of that fact,
Right.
in my opinion.
Right. I can also see, though, that in New York, I feel like the number of applications they get is probably just insane.
Sure. Yeah.
And so, like, finding these different criteria for weeding people out to make their process more efficient is also a factor. I don't have an answer for it, but
I don't think New York does.
I don't think anyone has a solution for it. I just think there's a lot of really interesting moving parts, especially when I moved here and I was applying for jobs that I was like not qualified for, even though I had 2 degrees.
Right.
They were both in music, so businesses are like,
Right.
why do
I can harmonize with your workplace.
Right? Like, I am a classically trained opera singer. I feel like that should count for something here. But they're like, this is New York. Right. Everyone is a singer.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And everybody's the best,
and
according to them.
Right?
Yeah. No, there was 62 applicants for the job that I have now. And it was just like, I was like, what? Like, in Missouri, that just didn't happen unless it's like a high-profile job.
Yeah.
So when they were like, yeah, 62 people applied, I was like, I'm never getting this job.
Yeah.
And it's a little daunting. So sometimes, actually, I wish that I didn't know how many people applied because it's scary.
Yeah. Right? Especially if you go on, like, Indeed or something and it's like, 100,000 people have viewed this job. And you're like, great, well, I'm just going to not even bother to write a cover letter or anything.
Sure, specific for this job.
Yeah,
well, my personality is like, oh, that's the one job I'm going to try to go for then. I think that's part of my, some people call me ambitious, sometimes some people call it stupid, because, to a degree, it is kind of that mantra of wanting to make the cut, and to be the cut. Like, not just hope that you make it, but like, ensure that you make it and do the work necessary to be that.
Right. And be that 1 out of 100,000 people that gets this thing that so many people want.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. You've spoken a lot about identity and finding your identity in your work, especially in that first job. And you've also mentioned being a Christian as well. How today, like in your current context, does your faith kind of translate into your work and where you find your identity?
Well, it's super relevant as of last week. So, without giving too much information, so the job that I work for now, I was a junior accountant at the company that I work for now, and we found out that the CFO had mismanaged some money, and so that money was it's missing. So that position was removed, and between me and the senior accountant, we had to really assume a lot more responsibility. And very similar situation. We didn't know passwords. We didn't know where all this paper was coming from. Mail was coming, and we didn't know what these forms meant. And I'm in the middle of this right now. Tomorrow I got to get there at 7 to make sure that I'm having as much time to really get everything settled as possible. And trying to find, again, passwords, logins, what bills have and haven't been paid. Oh, we have 2 other companies that I didn't even know about. Now we have to go manage those accounts. And so a very, very similar scaling process where my job just increased in responsibility by 3 times. And everybody's looking to meet it, to be somebody who fixes the problem. And so previously I would have, again, freaked out, and I would have lied through my teeth, and I would have stayed up till 2 a.m. every morning and Googled and called and researched and read as much as I could to learn it. Because I'm not going to not do the work. I'll just tell people I can and then figure out how to do it later, and then actually do it. That's the follow through, right? But this time around, I don't feel scared. I feel overwhelmed. But I feel like if you're doing any amount of substantial life, you're going to. If you're not scaling, if you're not growing and being stretched as an individual, I don't really feel like you're living to your fullest potential. And so for me, it's been an amazing kind of validation to recognize that I did learn that lesson, and that this time, even though it's actually much harder than the original kind of catastrophe when I first moved here, this is so much more difficult than that. But there's just a peace, that the Lord has me. He got me this job. He got me the skills to get here. I've gone through enough stuff, and I have, the ability to call on Him at any time, and to reference, His grace and His love, which allows me to scale. And yeah, that's kind of where that faith is applied directly, right now, right now.
Yeah. And I feel like also it's this knowledge, based on what you're saying, that even if you don't figure it out, or even if you whiff it completely, you still have a worth and an identity that's bigger than all of that.
Yeah, and at the same time, I think it's not just for my benefit, but also I think it's being noticed, and it's been coming back to me a little bit at the job, that people are noticing kind of that calmness, which is really just grace.
Yeah.
And it's that spiritual energy to overcome a physical obstacle, and that speaks for itself, not just to us, but also to non-believers as well. And I think that's where the testimony kicks in, right? And even if I do, like you say, totally lose it, I think that will have made an impact that's more important than an account being balanced. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. Because doing our jobs well and with excellence is important, and it is a really good way to communicate faithfulness, right, and stewardship and all sorts of great biblical ideas. But, also in how you prioritize human beings as well, and how you affect the people around you, and how you relate to the people around you is also not something that necessarily is a priority for everyone.
Yeah, I don't think that it is by default for any human.
Right.
And so going back to kind of the investment concept, as you interact with individuals and you start treating them like that human, right? Like that person who God loves, who's very similar to you. You start investing in that person with a proactive for you mindset. When you're handling a portfolio, you are trying to increase that portfolio. You're trying to put value in it, and you're trying to leverage it well and make it the best version of itself. And when we do that with people, we find that we actually are increased the more that they are increased. And the more at peace my boss is, the more calm I am. And the better listener my coworker is, the more I'm willing to listen. And so there's so much reciprocation, which just validates the fact that the Lord's word does not return void. And His concept and His precepts, the laws, the spiritual laws of physics, of giving and then receiving, but giving first with that expectation, is 100% more reliable than math at all, than accounts, than salary. It's faster than direct deposit. It has everything that we're looking for as individuals. And so when those answers are being provided to us, life can throw us all kinds of crazy eights, and we're going to be able to set them up and knock them down at our best. And again, if the world doesn't see that as successful, that doesn't matter, because it was your best, and you can't get better than your best. So that's all that you can ever expect yourself to get to.
Yeah. Well, thanks for all of that wisdom. It was a lot of really, really great stuff. In conclusion, will you tell me one thing that's hard right now and one thing that's great? The hard you kind of already talked about.
Yeah,
so.
A little bit. I mean, I think the great part is in hand. I think that piece is really refreshing. That those spiritual muscles kicking in, I think, is something that hasn't been there in this specific scenario previously in my life. And I'm just so very thankful for all of the people who have guided and disciplined me in this area. And I'm very thankful for the so-called negative experiences that forced me to learn this lesson, and His grace to let me learn it. So, I mean, I think that a lot of times the hardest stuff is the biggest blessing, because it's where He shows up the most and we're affected the most. So it is going good.
Yeah.
At the same time, it's hard. But a lot of times, good and hard is the same thing.
Right. They come as kind of a package deal a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. I really enjoyed our conversation.
I appreciate the questions. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. That's it for this week. Thank you so much for listening. Thanks to Christian Smeltzer for making time to come in and record right as he is in the craziness of launching the Suede app. Theme music is by Chad Rollinson, and the sound editor is Andrew Kim. Next week, you're in for a treat because you're going to hear from a poet friend of mine, Deborah Ias. Her work is gorgeous, and she's even going to share some of it on the episode. If you have any thoughts or want to engage on this topic further, head over to Apple Podcasts and leave a review, or you can go to my website, marybesafer.com. While you're there, you can subscribe to my newsletter. You're going to get an email from me every other Wednesday with an exclusive message and direct access to content and resources I think you'll love. You can also shoot me a message by clicking on Contact Me. And you can always head over to Instagram and follow me at maryb.saferit. That's all for now. Check back next week for a brand new episode.